What if I told you that hidden within an ancient text, rejected by mainstream Christianity for over 1,000 years, lie 10 prophecies so precise, so terrifying, that they perfectly describe the world we're living in right now? Before the flood destroyed the earth, before Abraham received God's promises, before Moses parted the Red Sea, a man named Enoch walked so closely with God that he was granted visions of the end times that would make your blood run cold. These aren't vague predictions wrapped in symbolic language that could mean anything. These are detailed, specific revelations about our current reality, artificial intelligence systems that think and learn beyond human control, genetic manipulation that rewrites the very code of life, global chaos erupting simultaneously across continents, and a final judgment that will make Noah's flood look like a gentle summer rain. The mainstream church buried these prophecies for centuries, declaring them heretical, dangerous, too shocking for ordinary believers to handle. But today, as we witness unprecedented events unfolding globally at breakneck speed, Enoch's words are emerging from the shadows with chilling, undeniable accuracy. Scientists, world leaders, and even secular researchers are beginning to acknowledge that something extraordinary is happening, something that ancient texts predicted with mathematical precision. If you're ready to discover what this mysterious prophet saw about our time, what he witnessed in visions so vivid they transported him beyond the veil of reality itself, hit that like button right now, because what you're about to hear will fundamentally change how you see the world forever, how you understand current events, and most importantly, how you prepare for what's coming next. Let's dive into these 10 shocking prophecies that connect directly to our critical moment in history. But before we begin, I must warn you, some of what you're about to hear may disturb you. These aren't feel-good predictions. These are sobering revelations about humanity's destiny that demand serious consideration. If you're easily frightened by discussions of judgment, cosmic warfare, and the end of the world as we know it, you may want to stop watching now. For everyone else, prepare to have your worldview shaken to its very foundations. Prophecy 1. The Great Falling Away. When faith dies in the hearts of millions. In humanity's early days, when civilization was taking its first tentative steps and evil began spreading across the earth like a plague, an extraordinary man named Enoch emerged from obscurity. Scripture summarizes his entire life in just a few mysterious words loaded with divine significance. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. But what does it truly mean to walk with God in such intimate communion that death itself cannot touch you? This wasn't merely obeying religious commands or following ceremonial rituals like the masses. It wasn't attending weekly services or memorizing sacred texts. It was something far more profound, living in continuous, intimate communion with the Creator himself, synchronized perfectly with his purposes, hearing his voice not just in thunder and earthquake, but in the gentle whisper of dawn's first light and the soft evening breeze that carries eternity's secrets. Enoch was, by all earthly measures, an ordinary man. He wasn't born into royalty, didn't possess vast wealth, commanded no armies, and held no prestigious religious office. He was a husband, a father, a worker, a simple citizen of his time, trying to make sense of an increasingly chaotic world. Yet his soul was mysteriously connected to eternity itself, even while living in a world that was rapidly plunging into unprecedented darkness and moral decay. The Bible tells us with stark clarity that in those days the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. This wasn't occasional sin or periodic moral failures. This was systematic, comprehensive corruption that infected every aspect of human society. Violence became normalized. Corruption was celebrated. Rebellion against divine order was not just tolerated, but actively promoted as enlightenment and progress. However, in the midst of this spiritual holocaust, Enoch remained faithful. His eyes weren't seduced by the temporary pleasures of a rebellious generation that mocked righteousness and celebrated depravity. His heart stayed anchored in the invisible realm, connected to the God who walked beside him day after day, hour after hour, moment by moment. And it was precisely in this sacred intimacy that God granted him extraordinary visions, glimpses of heaven's throne room opening, of mighty angels falling from grace, and of a coming king who would return to judge and redeem a broken world. But Enoch's visions weren't limited to his own generation. They penetrated deep into the future, revealing dark aspects of human rebellion that would manifest in the last days. He contemplated with horror a future generation where even the faithful would waver, their hearts gradually turning away from divine wisdom like ships drifting from their anchors. Truth would be systematically obscured, replaced by lies so sophisticated they would deceive even the elect if possible. Sinners would multiply exponentially, not just in number, but in their brazenness, their pride in rebellion, their active hostility toward everything pure and holy. As Enoch recorded in his ancient writings with trembling hands, the righteous will be cast down from their positions of influence, the world losing its moral anchor, adrift in storms of deception. The Apostle Paul, writing centuries later under divine inspiration, echoed this terrifying warning in 2 Thessalonians, speaking of a great apostasy, not just a gradual decline in faith, but a massive organized rebellion against God that would sweep across the earth like wildfire before the day of the Lord's return. Now contemplate our current world with honest eyes. Churches that once resonated with passionate worship, where believers gathered to seek God's face with tears and trembling, now stand silent, their pews empty, their altars cold, their sanctuaries converted into community centers or coffee shops. In the great metropolises of the world, historic cathedrals that took centuries to build, where countless souls found salvation and hope, are being systematically transformed into museums, shopping centers, and even nightclubs, while influential voices proclaim boldly that truth is relative. Morality is a matter of personal choice, and anyone who claims absolute standards is a dangerous extremist. Seminary professors who once defended the faith now openly deny the virgin birth, the resurrection, the authority of Scripture itself. Church leaders who should be shepherding souls are instead leading them away from biblical truth, embracing popular philosophies that tickle ears but damn souls. Denominations that were founded by martyrs who died for their faith are now ordaining pastors who don't even believe in God. Jesus himself predicted this spiritual catastrophe in Matthew 24 with words that should make every believer tremble. And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold, not just the love of unbelievers. The love of many within the church itself would freeze, their passion for God replaced by cold religiosity, their devotion to truth replaced by desire for popularity and acceptance. This isn't just backsliding or temporary spiritual weakness. This is the systematic abandonment of faith on a global scale, exactly as Enoch witnessed in his visions thousands of years ago. Prophecy number 2, the return of the Watchers. Influence, forbidden knowledge unleashed. If this message is already stirring something deep in your spirit, if you're beginning to recognize the signs Enoch saw unfolding around us today, show your support with a like and continue with us on this prophetic journey that will expose truths hidden for millennia. Enoch gained access to extraordinary, terrifying knowledge about the Watchers, powerful celestial beings who abandoned their divine position and holy calling to unite with the daughters of men, deliberately transgressing the sacred boundaries established by God himself. These weren't minor infractions or moments of weakness. These were calculated rebellions against the cosmic order with consequences that would echo through all of human history. These fallen beings, driven by pride and lust for power, taught humanity secrets that were never meant for mortal hands, dark enchantments that could manipulate reality itself, sorceries that opened doorways to demonic realms, the forging of weapons designed not just to kill, but to torture and terrorize. And most dangerously, the manipulation of creation itself at the genetic level. This forbidden knowledge didn't come as a gift of enlightenment, but as a curse that unleashed unprecedented violence, vanity, and moral corruption, plunging the entire world into chaos from which it never fully recovered. The Book of Enoch relates in chilling detail how these demonic teachings corrupted the earth, systematically generating unbridled greed that consumed everything in its path, environmental destruction on a scale never before witnessed, and violence so extreme that the ground itself cried out for justice. The Watchers didn't just corrupt individuals, they corrupted entire civilizations, entire ways of thinking, the very foundations of human society. Now consider our age with eyes wide open to the parallels. Knowledge explodes at unprecedented speed, doubling every few months. Rather than every few decades, as in previous centuries, scientific discoveries that once took generations now happen in laboratories around the world simultaneously. Genetic engineering doesn't just modify crops anymore, it reshapes life itself, creating organisms that have never existed, crossing species barriers that nature established as absolute boundaries. Artificial intelligence systems don't just process information. They think, they learn, they make decisions, they create art and literature. They even claim to experience emotions and desires. Some AI researchers openly admit they no longer understand how their most advanced systems work, that these machines have developed capabilities beyond their creators' comprehension or control. We see this manifesting today with startling clarity, as traditional biblical values are not just rejected, but actively criminalized in many nations. Countries that were founded on Christian principles now arrest pastors for preaching biblical truth about sexuality and marriage. Universities that were established to train ministers now prohibit prayer and ban Christian student organizations. Governments that once protected religious freedom now force believers to violate their consciences or face legal punishment. The Watcher's forbidden knowledge echoes through our genetic laboratories, where scientists create human-animal hybrids and experiment with consciousness itself. Their influence permeates our artificial intelligence systems that claim to possess souls and demand rights. Their ancient rebellion manifests in our educational systems that teach children to question their biological gender and reject their parents' authority. The great falling away that Enoch witnessed takes concrete form in empty churches across the Western world, in Christian leaders who deny the core doctrines of faith, in seminary professors who teach that the Bible is mythology rather than divine. Revelation. Relative morality isn't just accepted, it's mandated, with anyone claiming absolute truth being labeled as dangerous extremists. Yet through all this darkness, the faithful remnant perseveres exactly as Enoch foresaw. They are hidden, but not forgotten by God, suffering persecution, but not abandoned by heaven. They maintain their witness in hostile environments, preserve biblical truth when it's under attack, and continue to proclaim the gospel when it's costly to do so. These are the treasures that God will unveil with great honor when Christ returns with his 10,000 saints. This final apostasy serves as the dark backdrop against which God's light will shine most brilliantly. The contrast between evil and good, between rebellion and faithfulness, between destruction and salvation, will be so stark that no one will be able to claim ignorance or neutrality when the final judgment comes. Prophecy 10. The new heaven and new earth, the ultimate victory. As we stand at this unprecedented crossroads of history, with biblical prophecy unfolding before our very eyes at breakneck speed, The fundamental question isn't whether these ancient predictions will come to pass. History has already proven their accuracy beyond any reasonable doubt. The crucial question is whether we'll be ready when they reach their climactic fulfillment. Enoch's ultimate vision pierced through all the darkness of judgment, persecution, and destruction to glimpse the most glorious reality ever conceived, the final restoration of all things under Christ's eternal rule. He saw not just an ending, but the most magnificent beginning imaginable. A new heaven and a new earth, where righteousness doesn't just visit occasionally but dwells permanently, where God's presence doesn't just fill the temple but saturates every molecule of existence, and where the faithful finally receive their eternal reward in a realm beyond anything human imagination can conceive. This isn't just improvement or reform of the current world system. This is complete transformation, a reality so fundamentally different from our current experience that our language lacks adequate words to describe it. A world without sin means a world without the root cause of every problem humanity has ever faced. No more wars, because the pride and greed that cause conflict will be eliminated. No more disease, because the curse that brought sickness into the world will be broken. No more death, because its power will be destroyed forever. No more tears of grief, because there will be nothing left to grieve. No more tears of pain, because suffering itself will be abolished. No more tears of loneliness, because we will live in perfect communion with God and each other. No more tears of regret, because all things will be made new and every wrong will be made right. Isaiah's prophetic vision confirms and expands what Enoch saw. For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered or come to mind, but be glad and rejoice forever in what I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem as a rejoicing, and her people a joy. I will rejoice in Jerusalem and joy in my people. The voice of weeping shall no longer be heard in her, nor the voice of crying. The Apostle Paul, caught up in similar visions, struggled to find words to describe what he witnessed. Eye has not seen, nor ear heard, nor have entered into the heart of man the things which God has prepared for those who love him. But this glorious future isn't automatic. It requires a choice that each person must make individually. Will you choose wisdom or folly, light or darkness, the narrow path that leads to eternal life, or the broad road that leads to destruction? Will you align yourself with God's purposes, or continue in rebellion against his authority? Enoch made his choice in the midst of the most corrupt generation in human history up to that time, and God honored his faithfulness by taking him directly to heaven without experiencing death. Noah made his choice when the entire world mocked his warnings about coming judgment, and God saved him and his family through the flood that destroyed everyone else. Abraham made his choice to leave everything familiar and follow God's call to an unknown land, and became the father of faith for all generations. Moses made his choice to identify with God's enslaved people rather than enjoy the temporary pleasures of sin in Pharaoh's palace, and God used him to deliver an entire nation and give them his law. The choice that faced all these heroes of faith now faces you with even greater urgency, because we are living in the generation that will witness the fulfillment of all their prophecies. The signs Enoch saw are manifesting around us daily. The knowledge explosion Daniel predicted is accelerating exponentially. The moral corruption Jesus warned about is reaching levels that would have been unimaginable just decades ago. Choose today whom you will serve. For Enoch's ancient words thunder still across the millennia with divine authority that cannot be ignored. The King is coming, and with him the new creation that will last forever. Every knee will bow, and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. But the question is whether you'll do so willingly as his beloved child, or unwillingly as his judged enemy. The Urgency of this moment. The time for playing church, for lukewarm faith, for spiritual compromise has ended. We are living in the most critical moment in human history since Noah's flood, when the eternal destiny of every person alive will be determined by the choices they make right now. Rise up, you hidden righteous ones who have maintained your faith in hostile environments. Shine forth, you lights in the darkness who have refused to be extinguished by the world's opposition. Stand firm, you pillars of truth who have held your ground when everything around you was shaking. For the one who was and is to come stands even now at the door of history, ready to step onto the stage of human events one final time. When he appears in power and great glory, we who have believed in him shall be like him, for we shall see him as he truly is, not as the suffering servant, but as the conquering king, not as the rejected cornerstone, but as the chief cornerstone of a new creation. This is Enoch's ultimate prophecy and our ultimate hope, not just judgment for the wicked, though that will surely come, but transformation for the righteous beyond our wildest dreams. Not just an ending to this age of sin and sorrow, but a glorious beginning of an age of righteousness and joy that will never end. The question that will determine your eternal destiny remains before you like a mountain peak, stark and unavoidable. Where will you stand when the heavens open and every eye beholds him coming in power and great glory? Will you be among those who cry out in terror for the rocks and mountains to hide them from the wrath of the Lamb? Or will you be among those who lift up their heads with joy because their redemption draws near? Your destiny hangs in the balance of this choice. The scales of eternity are waiting to see which way your decision will tip them. Choose wisely, choose quickly, choose finally, for time is running out and eternity is watching. Final call to action. If these ancient prophecies have opened your eyes to the times we're living in, if they've helped you understand the deeper spiritual significance of current events, if they've stirred your heart to seek God while he may still be found, then don't keep this revelation to yourself. Share this video with everyone you know who needs to understand what's really happening in our world and what's coming next. Send it to family members who think these are just coincidences. Forward it to friends who believe we're living in normal times. Post it on social media where others who are seeking truth can find it. Subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell so you'll be among the first to know when we release our next prophetic revelation. We're committed to connecting ancient biblical truth with modern events, helping you understand your times and prepare for what's ahead. The signs are multiplying around us like contractions in a woman about to give birth. The birth pangs are getting stronger and closer together, indicating that the delivery is approaching rapidly. But for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, for those who understand biblical prophecy and recognize the fulfillment of ancient predictions, these aren't reasons for fear or despair. Instead, they are trumpet calls announcing the dawn of God's eternal kingdom, signals that our salvation is nearer than when we first believed, reminders that every prophecy concerning Christ's first coming was fulfilled literally and precisely, which means every prophecy concerning his second coming will be fulfilled just as literally and precisely. Hold fast to your faith. Maintain your hope. Keep your eyes fixed on the eastern sky, for your King is coming, and when he appears, you will be transformed into his likeness and share his glory forever. The ancient prophecies are being fulfilled. The end-time events are unfolding. The final chapter of human history is being written before our eyes. But for those who belong to Christ, this isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of the greatest adventure in the universe. An adventure that will continue throughout eternity in the presence of the one who loves us more than life itself. Your unveiling awaits, your transformation approaches, your eternal reward is being prepared. The question is, are you ready? Are literally creating intelligences that border on the limits of human understanding and control. Hidden military technologies wield power that seems almost supernatural, weapons that can destroy entire cities with surgical precision, surveillance systems that can track every human movement on Earth, psychological warfare techniques that can manipulate entire populations through social media algorithms. The same technologies that promise to cure cancer and extend human life also possess the power to create biological weapons that could eliminate specific ethnic groups or even the entire human species. Daniel's ancient prophecy rings with startling relevance across the centuries. But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase exponentially. Are we witnessing a modern replay of the days of Noah, when forbidden knowledge gained from fallen angels led directly to humanity's destruction? Enoch's vision functions as a divine mirror, forcing us to confront our current choices honestly. Knowledge itself isn't inherently evil. God is the source of all true wisdom and understanding. But knowledge pursued without God's guidance, knowledge gained through rebellion against divine order, knowledge used for selfish purposes rather than serving others, becomes a weapon more dangerous than nuclear bombs. In this era of wavering faith and uncontrolled technological discoveries, when scientists openly admit they are playing God, without considering the moral implications, Enoch's warning resonates with prophetic power that should terrify anyone with spiritual discernment. The question facing humanity today is identical to the one that faced the pre-flood world. Will we humbly seek the Creator's guidance for our discoveries, or will we arrogantly pursue the shadows of the Watcher's forbidden secrets, repeating their rebellion and sharing their judgment? Prophecy number 3. The coming judgment by fire. When heaven's wrath is finally unleashed. Among all the revelations Enoch received during his supernatural encounters with the divine, one vision stands out with overwhelming, terrifying force. The detailed vision of the Lord himself descending from heaven, not as the gentle shepherd seeking lost sheep, but as the righteous judge accompanied by 10,000 saints to execute perfect justice upon a corrupt earth. This wasn't a quiet or discreet arrival like his first coming. This wasn't the humble carpenter born in a stable, riding on a donkey, weeping over Jerusalem's spiritual blindness. Instead, Enoch witnessed a royal procession of unimaginable power and glory, a heavenly invasion announcing the return of the King of Kings, ready to restore justice to a world that had rejected his mercy and spurned his grace for millennia. The words of his prophecy, carefully preserved in the New Testament book of Jude, echo with urgent warning across the centuries. Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his saints to execute judgment on all, to convict all who are ungodly among them of all their ungodly deeds which they have committed in an ungodly way, and of all the harsh things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. This isn't the language of gentle correction or patient rehabilitation. This is the vocabulary of final judgment, of accounts being settled, of justice being served after centuries of apparent delay. Every ungodly deed, every harsh word against God, every act of rebellion, all will be brought into the light and judged with perfect righteousness. But Enoch's vision extended far beyond the immediate judgment of his own generation. His prophetic sight penetrated deep into the future, revealing the ultimate purification that awaited planet Earth. He contemplated with holy fear a judgment not of water as in Noah's days, but of fire, an all-consuming, purifying fire that would cleanse a world so thoroughly corrupted that only complete destruction and recreation could restore it to its intended glory. His words, later confirmed and expanded by the Apostle Peter's inspired writings, speak of heavens and earth that are currently reserved for fire, kept in storage like ammunition in an arsenal, waiting for the appointed day when the ungodly will face their final reckoning. The flood of Noah's time was merely a preview, a warning demonstration of God's patience finally reaching its limit and his justice being executed with devastating thoroughness. In Noah's generation, people continued their normal activities, eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, buying and selling, building and planting, completely blind to heaven's repeated warnings until the very day the waters burst forth from the deep and poured down from the heavens, swallowing their entire civilization in a matter of hours. Today, humanity exhibits the same spiritual blindness on an even grander scale. We build towers that literally touch the sky, monuments to human pride and technological achievement. We wield weapons capable of shattering not just cities, but entire continents, power that previous generations could only imagine in their wildest nightmares. We live as if the earth were eternal, as if our current systems and civilizations will continue indefinitely, as if there will never be a final accounting for our stewardship of God's creation. Yet even the most spiritually insensitive observers are beginning to notice that cracks are forming in the foundations of our world. Wildfires devastate entire continents with intensity never recorded in human history. Storms develop with unprecedented fury. Hurricanes that would have been considered impossible just decades ago. Societies tremble with civil unrest, ancient ethnic hatreds suddenly exploding into genocide, economic systems that seemed unshakable collapsing overnight. Could these be the first whispers of Enoch's prophesied fire? Are we witnessing the early birth pangs of creation groaning for its final purification? The signs are multiplying so rapidly that even secular scientists are using religious language to describe what they're observing. Apocalyptic fires, biblical floods, unprecedented environmental changes. But even in judgment, God's mercy shines through. Just as Noah found safety in the ark that God himself designed and commanded him to build, Christ presents himself as the true ark of salvation for all who will come to him. The fire that will destroy the ungodly is the same fire that will refine and purify the righteous, burning away their dross, but preserving their souls for eternal glory. Prophecy number 4. The rise of the elect one, the king who will end all earthly kingdoms. If you're beginning to recognize these prophetic patterns manifesting around you, if you want to understand more deeply what's happening in our world and what's coming next, subscribe to our channel right now so you don't miss the remaining revelations that could change how you prepare for the future. In the midst of his visions of judgment and destruction, Enoch received a revelation of hope so magnificent it illuminated all the surrounding darkness. A vision of an incomparable figure he called the Elect One, a being destined to rule not just over human kingdoms, but over all creation with perfect justice and unlimited power. This wasn't just another human ruler, another political leader promising to solve the world's problems through better policies or more efficient government. This was someone fundamentally different, someone who would sit on the throne of ultimate glory, possessing the wisdom to judge every human heart and the power to transform the entire earth according to divine righteousness. The Apostle John, writing centuries later in the book of Revelation, confirmed and expanded Enoch's vision with remarkable precision. A king called faithful and true, the King of kings and Lord of lords, riding forth on a white horse with eyes like flames of fire and a sword proceeding from his mouth, coming not to negotiate with evil, but to destroy it completely and establish God's kingdom on earth forever. Enoch's elect one isn't a distant dream or a vague hope for some far-off future. This is Christ Jesus himself, the one who came first as the suffering servant, dying on a Roman cross for the sins of humanity, but who is promised to return in his second coming, not as a humble carpenter, but as a conquering king with power that makes earthly armies look like children playing with toys. Our current world cries desperately for this kind of perfect justice and righteous leadership. Human leaders consistently fail, no matter how promising they seem at the beginning. Empires rise with great hope and fanfare, only to crumble under the weight of corruption and moral decay. Political promises are made, and broken so regularly that cynicism has replaced hope in most people's hearts. Even the most well-intentioned governments eventually succumb to the same pride, greed, and power hunger that have destroyed every human kingdom in history. Yet the global shakings we're witnessing, from wars that threaten to engulf entire continents to economic systems collapsing under their own contradictions, may be God's way of preparing the stage for his eternal kingdom. Every human solution is proving inadequate. Every political ideology is failing to address the root problems of human nature. Every technological advance brings new dangers as well as benefits. Imagine what Enoch saw, a world where every tear is wiped away not by government welfare programs, but by the presence of perfect love, where swords are beaten into plowshares not through peace treaties that can be broken, but through the transformation of human hearts, where perfect peace reigns not because of superior military force, but because righteousness covers the earth like waters cover the sea, flowing from the throne of the elect one himself. Isaiah's prophetic words, written centuries after Enoch but confirming his vision, resound with eternal promise. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end upon the throne of David and over his kingdom, to order it and establish it with judgment and justice from that time forward, even forever. But the coming of the elect one is also a reckoning that will separate humanity into two eternal categories. His arrival will bring unspeakable joy to those who have waited for his appearing, who have lived in faithful expectation of his kingdom, who have suffered for righteousness' sake and endured persecution for his name. For them, his coming will be the fulfillment of every hope and the answer to every prayer. But for those who have rejected his mercy, spurned his grace, and lived in rebellion against his authority, his appearance will bring terror beyond description. Every knee will bow, not because they want to worship him, but because his glory will be so overwhelming that even the most hardened rebels will be unable to stand. Every heart will be laid bare before his penetrating gaze, every secret sin exposed, every hidden motive revealed. The question each of us must answer is simple but eternally significant. Will his coming be our greatest joy or our worst nightmare? Prophecy 5. The unveiling of the hidden righteous. When God's secret servants are finally revealed, Enoch received a revelation of profound comfort for believers living in the end times, a promise that would sustain the faithful through their darkest hours of persecution and apparent defeat. He saw that the hidden righteous, those who labored in secret places where no cameras recorded their faithfulness, who endured scorn and mockery for their beliefs, who suffered loss and persecution simply for bearing Christ's name, would finally step from the shadows into eternal light and recognition. "Fear not, you righteous ones," his ancient words proclaim with divine authority, "for your names are written in permanent ink before the glory of the Great One. Your faithfulness has not gone unnoticed. Your tears have been collected in heaven's bottles. Your sufferings have been recorded in the books that will never be destroyed." This prophecy takes on breathtaking relevance when we consider believers across the globe today. In the hidden places of the earth, faithful Christians gather in shadows, clutching worn Bibles and handwritten scripture portions in countries where owning a Bible can cost everything: freedom, family, even life itself. Underground churches whisper hymns and prayers under the crushing weight of government oppression and religious persecution. Families risk everything for a single page of scripture, memorizing verses because written copies are too dangerous to possess. Children learn Bible stories in code words and hidden symbols because open Christian education has been criminalized. Pastors minister to their flocks while knowing that discovery means prison, torture, or execution. These are God's hidden jewels, unknown to CNN and BBC, unnoticed by the world's media, invisible to political leaders and international organizations, but precious beyond measure to the heart of heaven. Their names may never appear in history books or on church honor rolls, but they are written in the Lamb's Book of Life with letters of gold. Jesus himself promised in Matthew 10 with absolute certainty, "But there is nothing covered that will not be revealed, and hidden that will not be known. Whatever I tell you in the darkness, speak in the light, and what you hear in the ear, preach on the housetops." One day, and Enoch saw that day clearly in his visions, these faithful servants will shine like the sun in their Father's kingdom, crowned with eternal honor that will never fade, recognized and celebrated by angels and archangels, by prophets and apostles, by all the redeemed throughout history. As the prophet Daniel foresaw with crystal clarity, "Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the firmament, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever." But this prophecy isn't just about believers in communist countries or Islamic nations. It includes every Christian who has chosen faithfulness over popularity, who has maintained their integrity when compromise would have been more profitable, who has stood for truth when lies were more acceptable, who has chosen the narrow path when the broad road seemed more appealing. It includes the single mother who works 2 jobs and still finds time to teach her children about Jesus, the businessman who loses contracts because he refuses to participate in corrupt practices, the student who accepts lower grades rather than cheat, the employee who speaks truth to power even when silence would be safer. All of these will be unveiled when Christ returns, their hidden righteousness suddenly blazing forth like stars emerging as darkness falls. The world that ignored them, mocked them, persecuted them, will suddenly see them as God has always seen them, as His precious children, His faithful servants, His beloved bride, prepared for eternal glory. Prophecy, chapter 6. The multiplication of violence when chaos becomes the new normal. If you've been blessed by these revelations so far, if they're opening your eyes to the profound connections between ancient prophecy and current events, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You don't want to miss what's coming next, because each prophecy builds on the previous ones to create a complete picture of our times. Visualize the terrifying scene Enoch witnessed in his supernatural visions. The heavens themselves ablaze with divine glory, the earth trembling under the weight of approaching judgment, and God's mighty armies advancing like an unstoppable tsunami, mounted on white horses clothed in pure and brilliant linen, their faces shining with the reflected glory of their commander. This wasn't the familiar image of the gentle shepherd carrying lambs, or the humble carpenter of Nazareth working quietly in his shop. Instead, Enoch saw the Lion of Judah in his full majesty and power, coming not to save but to judge, not to heal but to conquer, ready to judge the nations with righteous wrath and establish his eternal throne over the ruins of human kingdoms. Enoch foresaw what John would later confirm in the book of Revelation with terrifying precision. A king returning not as the meek and lowly savior, but as the conquering hero, before whom every eye will see him coming in power and great glory, and every tongue will confess that he is Lord, whether willingly or under divine compulsion. And most striking of all, this vision that Enoch received before the flood connects directly and powerfully to our current times. Jesus himself established this connection in Matthew 24 with words that should make every observant person tremble. But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. Noah's world wasn't just morally corrupt, it was violently, aggressively, systematically evil. The earth was filled with violence, not just occasional outbursts of anger or isolated criminal acts, but endemic cultural violence that had become normalized and accepted as the natural state of human existence. Corruption wasn't hidden in dark corners. It was celebrated in broad daylight. Contempt for truth wasn't a philosophical position. It was a way of life that infected every aspect of society. Does this description sound disturbingly familiar when you look at our current world with honest eyes? Wars aren't just spreading among nations. They're multiplying exponentially, with conflicts erupting simultaneously across multiple continents. Civil wars tear apart countries that were stable just years ago. Ethnic cleansing and genocide, which we thought were relics of darker ages, are happening right now in multiple locations around the globe. Natural disasters roar across the earth with increasing intensity and frequency that climate scientists admit they cannot fully explain. Hurricanes develop with unprecedented speed and power. Earthquakes strike in patterns that don't fit historical models. Wildfires burn with temperatures and consume areas that were thought impossible just decades ago. But perhaps most significantly, moral degradation has reached levels that would have shocked previous generations into action. Yet today it's not just tolerated, but actively celebrated as progress and enlightenment. Behaviors that were universally condemned as perverse and destructive throughout human history are now protected by law and promoted in schools. Children are exposed to sexual content and gender confusion that would have been considered child abuse in any previous civilization. Violence has become entertainment, watched by millions who cheer for more graphic bloodshed and more realistic depictions of torture and murder. Video games train children to kill with increasing realism and psychological sophistication. Movies and television shows celebrate criminals and mock virtue, making heroes out of drug dealers and assassins, while portraying law enforcement and traditional authorities as corrupt and oppressive. Could these be the unmistakable precursory signs of Enoch's vision finally coming to pass? Is the world groaning and convulsing as if it senses the approach of its righteous king and is preparing for the final confrontation between good and evil? The signs are multiplying so rapidly that even secular observers are beginning to use biblical language to describe what they're witnessing. Prophecy number 7, the explosion of knowledge, when human wisdom becomes dangerous folly. Enoch witnessed a time in the distant future when human knowledge would increase beyond all previous comprehension, when the secrets of creation itself would be unlocked and manipulated by minds that possessed great intelligence but no wisdom, tremendous power but no moral restraint. He saw that the same pattern of forbidden knowledge that the Watchers had introduced to his generation would repeat itself on a global scale in the last days, but with consequences far more devastating than the original corruption. The Watchers had taught humanity to forge weapons, to practice sorceries, to manipulate genetics, and to unlock powers that were meant to remain hidden. But what Enoch saw coming in the final generation made those ancient revelations look primitive by comparison. He witnessed technologies that would make gods out of men and demons out of machines, knowledge that would promise to solve every human problem while actually creating problems that could destroy the entire human race. Today, we stand at the exact precipice Enoch foresaw thousands of years ago. We are witnesses to the technological singularity that futurists describe in almost mystical terms, the point at which artificial intelligence systems become more intelligent than their human creators and begin advancing at rates that human minds cannot comprehend or control. AI systems don't just process information faster than humans anymore. They create new knowledge, make discoveries, solve problems, write literature, compose music, and even claim to experience emotions and desires that their programmers never intended or programmed. Some of the world's leading AI researchers openly admit they no longer understand how their most advanced systems work, that these machines have developed capabilities that seem to emerge spontaneously from their interaction with vast amounts of data. We are literally creating intelligences that may soon surpass human understanding completely, and we're doing so without any meaningful discussion of the moral, ethical, or spiritual implications. The very scientists who are building these systems warn that they could lead to human extinction, yet they continue building them because the competitive pressure and potential profits are too enormous to resist. Genetic engineering has moved far beyond modifying crops or treating inherited diseases. Scientists now routinely create entirely new forms of life that have never existed in nature, crossing species barriers that seemed absolute, combining genetic material from humans, animals, plants, and even synthetic DNA sequences designed on computers. They speak openly of designing human beings like products, selecting not just for health, but for intelligence, appearance, and even personality traits. The same laboratories that promise to cure cancer and extend human life indefinitely are also capable of creating biological weapons so targeted and virulent that they could eliminate specific ethnic groups or even the entire human population. Dual-use research that can heal or kill with equal effectiveness proceeds with virtually no oversight or moral restraint. Quantum computers promise to unlock mysteries of the universe that have puzzled humanity since the beginning of time, but they also threaten to break every encryption system currently protecting financial networks, military communications, and personal privacy. The same technology that might allow us to understand the deepest secrets of reality could also be used to create surveillance systems so comprehensive that no thought or action could remain private. Daniel's ancient prophecy echoes across the centuries with startling relevance to our exact moment in history. But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase exponentially. The Hebrew word translated increase in this prophecy carries the connotation of violent multiplication, knowledge erupting like a volcano rather than growing gradually like a plant. We are witnessing exactly this kind of exponential, explosive growth in human knowledge, with the sum total of human information now doubling every few months rather than every few decades, as in previous centuries. Yet with each breakthrough comes greater potential for destruction that could dwarf every previous catastrophe in human history. Nuclear weapons can obliterate entire cities in seconds. Biological weapons can eliminate vast populations while leaving infrastructure intact. Digital warfare can collapse entire civilizations without firing a single shot, by simply disrupting the electronic systems that modern life depends on absolutely. We are racing toward discoveries that may ultimately seal humanity's fate, repeating the same pattern that led to judgment in Noah's time, but with power that makes the antediluvian world's destruction look gentle by comparison. Prophecy, number 8, the shaking of all things, when every foundation crumbles. But Enoch's prophetic vision didn't end with judgment and destruction. His final vision blazes with hope, brighter than the sun, a divine fire not of annihilation, but of renewal, purification, and recreation. He spoke with trembling voice. About an 8th week in God's eternal calendar, a culminating period when righteousness would finally triumph over evil, when sin would perish forever from the earth, and when creation itself would be cleansed and restored to its original glory. The Apostle John, writing centuries later under divine inspiration, confirmed and expanded Enoch's vision with breathtaking clarity. Now I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. Also there was no more sea. Then I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. This isn't just renovation or improvement of the current world system. This is complete recreation, total transformation, the birth of something entirely new from the ashes of the old. The fire Enoch saw isn't the fire of a forest fire that destroys everything in its path, but the fire of a refiner that burns away impurities while preserving what is precious, like gold tested in a furnace, that emerges purer and more valuable than before. No more pain, because the source of pain, sin itself, will be eliminated forever. No more death, because the curse that brought death into the world will be broken permanently. No more sorrow, because everything that causes grief will be removed from existence. Only God's glory filling every corner of reality, every atom of creation pulsing with divine life and love. The prophet Malachi asked the question that every human heart must face: but who can endure the day of his coming, and who can stand when he appears? For he is like a refiner's fire, and like launderer's soap. He will sit as a refiner and a purifier of silver. He will purify the sons of Levi and purge them as gold and silver. Our current world, scarred by wildfires that seem to burn with supernatural intensity, torn apart by wars that erupt without warning, broken by moral corruption that spreads like a pandemic, groans in anticipation of this promised renewal. The Apostle Paul described creation's current condition with words that perfectly capture what we're witnessing. For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pangs together until now. Not only that, but we also who have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, eagerly waiting for the adoption, the redemption of our body. This divine fire tests everything and everyone without exception. Our deeds, our motives, our hearts, our words, everything will be examined under the perfect light of God's holiness. Will they stand like refined gold, or will they burn like worthless chaff blown away by the wind? The testing has already begun. Every institution that seemed permanent is shaking. Political systems that appeared unshakable are crumbling. Economic structures that seemed eternal are collapsing. Religious organizations that claimed divine authority are being exposed as corrupt. Educational institutions that promoted themselves as sources of truth are being revealed as centers of deception and indoctrination. Even the physical earth itself shakes with increasing frequency and intensity, as if creation is preparing for its final transformation. Climate patterns that were stable for millennia are shifting rapidly. Magnetic fields that have protected Earth for thousands of years are weakening and moving. Solar activity increases in patterns that scientists cannot predict or explain. This isn't cause for despair for those who belong to Christ. It's cause for incredible hope and anticipation. We're witnessing the labor pains that will give birth to the most glorious reality ever imagined. Prophecy number 9, the final apostasy, when evil calls itself good. If this message has stirred something deep in your soul, if you're beginning to see the connections between ancient prophecy and current events, don't let this moment pass without action. Hit that like button to show your support. Share this video with someone who needs to understand these revelations, and subscribe to our channel for more biblical insights that connect ancient truth to modern times. Enoch saw a final rebellion against God that would surpass even the wickedness of his own generation. And that's saying something, considering that his generation was so evil that God destroyed the entire world except for 8 people. He witnessed humanity's complete systematic rejection of divine authority, a time when evil would not only be accepted, but would actively call itself good, and good would be denounced as evil. This isn't merely moral decline or gradual cultural shift. This is organized, intentional warfare against truth itself, against the very concept of absolute right and wrong. Enoch saw a generation that would not just ignore God's standards, but would actively oppose them, criminalizing biblical beliefs and persecuting those who maintained them. We